What's going on, fish nerds? I'm back! What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the fish room. Glad to have you all back. Glad to be back after a long hiatus. And to kick things off with this first video after having that time off, let's just start it with a fish room tour. I'll show you all the tanks, show how all the fish are doing, and we'll just get you guys up to speed. All right, so let's start right here with the 30-gallon tall. The Hemichromis Leafa Lily Mwanda. Mwanda is actually the true Leafa Lily. And these guys are gorgeous. I'm loving these fish more all the time. They're some of my favorites. You got the big male up there on the top, and that's the female he's chasing right there. And these two fry, whenever I scooped out all the rest of the fry, these two just hid down here in all this rock work, and I never did get them out of here, and they just hid in the rock work until they were big enough to where mom and dad don't mess with them anymore. And he is colored up awesome. Look at this guy right here. Such a pretty fish. But they're getting pretty good size. They're almost as big as mom. I need to get them out of here, and these will probably go back to the local fish store that mom and dad came from. But I'm having a, oh man, look at that color. Look at that color. Man, he's pretty. But I'm having a hard time deciding if I want to keep breeding these on a regular basis, or if I want to just enjoy the pair that I have and put some other things in here. And if I do decide to keep breeding them, I am going to have to get these two bristlenose out of here, because the bristlenose have developed a taste for the eggs. So these guys lay on a frequent basis, but their eggs never make it to hatching because these guys come in and steal them out of the night. But that guy's a really good looking bristlenose. So I'm thinking I may just make this kind of a, you know, West African tank and not necessarily focus on breeding these guys, at least not all the time. Maybe take them out and breed them every now and then, put them back in. But I'm thinking I might get like an African butterfly fish or something like that to put in here with these, and just kind of have an aggressive African community going on in here. Because these guys, I mean, they're punks. Don't get me wrong, they're punks, but they also aren't something that's going to absolutely kill everything else in the tank. I mean, they pick at each other, but I mean, these fry are getting along fine. These bristlenose are getting along fine. So that's what I'm thinking of doing, and I'm pretty much settled. I'm going to rescape this tank. The more I look at this rock work, the way everything's just piled up so nice and neat, the more I look at it, the more I hate it. So I just want to tear it all down and do it over again. So that's probably going to happen, if not in the near future, still not the distant future either. And you'll notice there is a lot of green spot algae on there, and I need to get some more plants in there and that kind of thing, which we do have. All my Anubias keeps coming loose and floating up here, but we've got some frog bit up here, but unfortunately we've also got some duckweed up there as well that's starting to come in all around the frog bit. But you might remember I've got the algae scrubber back here. In all fairness to the algae scrubber, even though I've got all this green spot algae, for a long time this was not turned on, just because I didn't have a timer to hook it up to, and when I finally got around to getting a timer and got it running, the green spot algae did die back some, in all fairness to the algae scrubber. But I do still have a bunch of green spot in here, and it's on the glass too, making it a little hard for the camera to focus if I get a piece of green spot in there. But that's what's going on in this tank, and may as well go ahead and feed these guys while we're filming them. There we go. This is just the omega-1 cichlid pellets. This has turned into one of my favorite foods for these guys. They go after it pretty good. And the ingredients list on this food is awesome. Not being paid to say it at all, but this has become one of my favorite lines of food, the omega-1 fish foods. I think he's picked on Mom enough that she's hiding down in the rocks. I don't know if she'll come out to eat or not. I did throw in a little extra just so some stuff would get down to the bottom for these guys. Look how good looking of a bristle nose he is. Now moving on down here to the grow out tank. This is a 40-gallon breeder. Got a lot of the Hemichromis fry down here. A lot of these are getting to be sellable size, and some of them are starting to get a lot of really good color. The water's cloudy. I actually dumped a whole can of green beans in here for the plecos last night, so that's why it's all cloudy in here. But look at the color on this guy. He's only about 2 inches, but if it'll focus on, look at that. That is a gorgeous little fish. Definitely sellable size. I don't know if he's not quite breeder size yet, but man, he's looking good. Got a whole bunch of these growing out in here. Got a whole bunch of the super red bristle nose growing out in here. Just got some of them down here so I can get them a little bigger. I've got a bunch of these super red bristle nose in the breeding for profit tank, but I just got a bunch of these down here, letting them grow out and get bigger size. A lot of people want to get more adult size, sexable, like for sure males and that kind of thing. So that's why these are down here with these guys, and everybody's getting along good. And it's, I mean, it's not a pretty tank. It's just a pretty well a bare tank just for grow out, but still a fun tank. As much movement as I get out of all these Hemichromis fry, and we'll throw some of these omega-1 pellets in there for them as well. It's fun to watch these guys eat. They just swarm. Put a little more in there. Really fun to watch these guys. Super Reds are going to come in and see if they can get in on the action too. For a bare, basically pretty ugly tank, it's actually pretty fun, as many fish as I've got in here growing out. And those of you that are regulars to the channel, you know this is on an auto water change, so even though the water's a little cloudy and even though this is very overstocked of a tank, it's getting lots of new water coming through it, and water quality is just fine. Everybody gets along great. We're doing fine. Look at this super red swarm. Oop, just knocked down some fish food, but it's alright. I love it. Alright, and here's the 20 tall. All the rock work and everything in here. Got the exclamation point Rasboras hanging out back here in the back corner. They're all kind of hanging back a little bit right now because I'm down here with the camera. But I think they might be suspicious they're about to be fed. And they are correct. But it's actually a pretty dark tank, even though I've got the Fennec Stingray on here on the 20 tall, just because of, look at all this insane duckweed in here. It's just ridiculous. Look how thick that is. Didn't want to focus on it, but man, so much duckweed in there. But I really like the look of this tank. I really like the look of all this different colored rock and stuff. And I did collect all this rock myself from the river by my in-laws' house. They live by a river in Arkansas. We went down there to let the kids go swimming, and while the kids were swimming, I was on the banks with a bucket picking up rocks. Look at this rock down here. I love this rock. We'll focus. But got the one super red down in here. Gotta have one of those in every tank. And I really like the exclamation point reservoirs. I want to get a lot more of them. And I also want to get something else in here, some kind of top dweller that's going to be out and about to make these guys a little more comfortable on their own, aside from even just increasing the size of their school. Thinking maybe some pseudomugills or something along those lines, something that's going to stay nice and tiny to fit in here with what we got going on here with the Nano scene, but it's going to be out and about and active enough to make these guys a little more comfortable. Of course, we got Malaysian trumpet snails hanging out down here on the bottom, but I really like this tank. This is one of my favorite tanks in the entire fish room. And of course, a fish room is not complete without a breeding for profit tank that looks an absolute mess, except for just how many fish are in it. Look at these guppies. That is an awesome looking guppy. But just a ton of fish in here, ton of guppies, ton of plecos, ton of cherry shrimp, and billions upon billions of these goofy trumpet snails that the camera doesn't want to focus on because I need to clean the glass. Look at all those things. Look at all those snails. Check out that cherry shrimp though. But just so many living things in one tank. It's ridiculous, and I love it. Got the plecos all over the place in here. A lot of them are actually hiding out underneath all this cladophora algae. They'll come out in a minute when I feed this tank. We've got a bunch of these bristlenose hanging out in here, breeding in here. That's where I got the breeding trio. And it's about to be a quartet. I've got a male that I'm leaving in here who's about big enough to breed himself. But I love the look of this tank now that it's got all these guppies in it. For a while there weren't very many guppies in this tank. I had them down here as well as a couple other tanks, and I just finally took all of them, just put them all in this tank, and I love it. When I first started breeding the guppies, I was trying to be specific for this blue color, and I was trying to cull out all the red and just get rid of all the reds, either giving them away or selling them. But I've gotten to where I really like the look of the mix of having the reds and the blues all in here together. And now just culling for health now. But really like the look of the tank. Really like the look of these guppies. So let's go ahead and feed in here, and you'll get to see another pleco swarm down here. Here we go. I love the swarms, man. Love it. A lot of these plecos will start to gather around down here once that food all starts getting down at the bottom too. And this is the this is also Omega 1, but it's the freshwater flakes. Again, not a sponsor. I just really like this food, and these guys really like it too, as you can tell. And here's the Blue Dream shrimp tank, which looks a lot like it did the last time you saw it, except that there are a lot more shrimp, a lot more snails, and there's a lot more cladophora algae. I need to get all that pulled out from back there and just yank it out. It's not really attached to anything except snails back there, so I need to get that out of there. I don't want it to creep its way all the way forward and get all mixed in with the what is this stuff? It just subwasser tank. The word just left my brain. but got a lot of these awesome Fantasy Dream Blue shrimp in here. I just fed these guys some Shrimp King Complete, so I'm hoping they'll all kind of start to make their way up towards the front of the tank. There's some right up here. I'm focusing on that guy. Look how pretty that shrimp is. That's just such a pretty blue color. These guys have started to take off for me pretty well here with the breeding. Doing really good for me. These are the Fantasy Blues that I got from Flip Aquatics. They've just done outstanding, and they look great. These are probably my favorite shrimp that I've ever kept, are these Fantasy Blues. I love this color on these guys, and wish these stupid snails would get out of the way so the camera would know what to focus on, because the shrimp keep moving around, but then the snails stay still. The camera keeps wanting to focus on the snails, but they're all starting to convene up here to the front, come after this food. And look how dark that one is. It's a good looking shrimp. That's like a midnight blue. So yeah, you can tell this tank's doing really good. This tank isn't exploding with shrimp yet, but I also haven't been feeding it as much as I fed the red cherry shrimp tank when I had it explode on me. But they are definitely breeding for me and doing really well. And by and large, they're staying pretty true to color. I've only had maybe one or two that have come out with a little bit of red on them. Everybody else just keeps coming out with this gorgeous blue color. My only complaint about this tank is that it's up on the top rack and I don't get to see it all that well. So eventually I want to do a lower rack for all these shrimp so I can actually see them better. I actually have to stand on something in order to really get a good view of these guys, but I really enjoy these shrimp. So that's the royal blue tank, and over here on the dark side is the cherry shrimp tank, and I have the exact same light on both of these, but there's so much of this hornwort and algae up here that none of the light hardly gets down here. But look, I'm fighting the glare bad, but look at all these shrimp, man. I had to come around here to get a better angle to get away from that glare, but so many cherry shrimp in this tank. Ton of snails too, but so many cherry shrimp. Oh, and it sounds like the dog wants out too. I'll get him in a second. But yeah, this is another tank that I wish it was down lower, just because it's so fun to look at this huge swarm of shrimp. And there's as many up here, like, as you can see all the shrimp down here, and all the way back they're just all over the place. But there's just as many of them up here in all this hornwort. You can see them just climbing all over, all up in that hornwort up there. All over the place. The glare is killing me. There we go. That's a nice, or at least better picture there. And moving out here into the living room, we've got the 55-gallon, home of the one and only gill. This is my #1 fish. I actually got this guy. The very first tank I set up in this house was actually that 30-gallon, the first one in the video. I had it in here in the living room, and he was the first fish that I bought. Oh, Shiloh wants to come in for his cameo. What's up, buddy? What's up, pup? But tank's doing good overall. My plants have been in better shape. The Amazon sword decided to finally go through a phase after a few years of just being enormous. It just, all the big leaves died all the way back, and now I've got all these little small leaves. So it's going through a phase, but we'll get it nursed back and get it nice and big and full again. Got all the crypts down here. The crypts are actually doing good. Got the Crinum calamastratum. Got all kinds of it. It was sold to me as dwarf sage, but then once I planted it, it decided it wasn't dwarf after all. So I don't know if this is just regular sage that's not the dwarf, or if it's actually Val that somebody mistakenly sold to me just because it was still short and hadn't grown to its full potential yet. And all the Nubius, oh, got a dead leaf I need to get in there and get out. But so I got the cardinal tetras in here, still wanting to get a lot more of them, just never have. Wanting to, what I really want to have going on here is have the angelfish and a big school of the cardinal tetras in this tank is what I want going on. But we do still have some catfish in here. We got a bristlenose pleco in here hiding out somewhere. And I've got a banjo cat hiding out somewhere. Got a couple coolie loaches hiding out somewhere. Because everybody's kind of hiding out somewhere. Got some, I don't know if we'll be able to see up in there. I've got some upside down cats that hide out in this log over here. But you just really want to be in this video, don't you, buddy? Don't you? What is it? Goodness, man. Shiloh the Wonder Mutt. But yeah, overall tank's doing good though, except for somehow some duckweed made it from the garage out here to the living room and found its way into this tank. I did have this tank duckweed free for the longest time, but it's made its way back in. So I need to figure out if I can deal with that, get that out of there. But oh, there's the bristlenose. This is a calico bristlenose going through there. Rosie. I was hoping, there she is back there. I was hoping we'd see the banjo cat, because he actually typically hides out in plain sight more than a banjo cat will normally. Normally you put a banjo cat in a sand bed like this and they'll bury themselves, but he actually a lot of times just kind of hangs out and lays on top of the leaves and just kind of tries to blend in that way. But I'm not seeing him right now. But my Nubius just keeps booming. I break it off and it grows back, and I break it off and it grows some more. Got a bunch of new growth there. Got all that's an offshoot of this bigger plant. All those tiny little leaves from where it's growing in the shade back there. What, you gonna fight the camera, Bubba? Huh? Is that what you're gonna do? Every now and then I get too close and Gil decides he's gonna try to chase the camera off. I need to clean this glass too. Man, this video's making me realize how much work I need to do. But yeah, that is the 55. Alright guys, so those are all the old tanks, the tanks that you've seen on this channel before, but there are new tanks that I have not yet shown on this channel. I have new fish, new tanks, and if you want to see those, you got to tune in next week. So I'm going to reveal some new tanks and show you some new things that I'm doing in the fish room, and even I'm doing a little bit out in the house as well. So if you guys want to see what I'm doing, if you want to see the new fish, make sure you come back again next week on Friday for more fish videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. You're awesome. God bless you, fish nerds. I'll see you next time.